Hi, church. Happy Friday. Welcome to today's digital devotion. We have obviously pre-recorded this before going on sabbatical, but we were just so excited that you are getting the chance to hear the next sermon series that will be preached for 4 weeks by the Reverend Dr. Kikanza Nuri-Robins, and then the last week by Reverend Goodjoin. And the topic is stories from the Old Testament. And Jacob and I both love preaching from the Old Testament. It is chock full of weird stories, interesting stories, flawed characters, heroes, heroines, scandals. The Old Testament is just a microcosm of every weird and interesting story that you've probably ever lived or heard. And so I can't wait to hear what these women are preaching on. I can't wait to hear their perspectives. And I know part of the sermon series is trying to find out lessons from these stories that can apply to our own lives. So they're not just stories stuck in the past, they're stories that speak to us today, that somehow span the millennia and make an impact on the way that we see the world.
Absolutely. And before we left, our ultimate book group was studying the book of Isaiah. And we made it through the first 39 chapters. There's 66 total, so we've got more to go. But there were times when it just got really strange, and there's so many judgment oracles in the book of Isaiah, and so it was hard to wade through that. And I think that material gives the Old Testament this reputation that it's all about this God of wrath and vengeance, and as a result, there's nothing that we can take out of it for our modern life. But that actually couldn't be farther from the truth, that the Old Testament canon as a whole is just this really beautiful witness of poetry and history and mythology that is all woven together as a people group. This group of Hebrews from the ancient Near East are trying to understand who God is. And along the way, they realize that sometimes we get it wrong. We read ourselves into who God is. But more and more, they discover that this is a God who's God over all of creation, not just Israel. This is a God that's actually slow to anger and abounding in loving kindness. A God who has this ultimate vision of redemption for all of God's people. And so we think that delving into these, what we call Old Testament or Hebrew scriptures, is such an important part of our faith tradition, to understand that we are on that same journey, to dig through so much of our experiences and say, what does this teach us about who God is? How can we know God more? That's what the ancient Israelites were doing, and it teaches us so much. And so we know that these two great preachers are going to have a lot to share with you about lessons that you all can find in the Hebrew scriptures. And so we are praying for you and hope that you are experiencing just this incredible spiritual growth during the month of July.
Yes.
Take care.